Wow, what a year it's been, am I right? I wonder what 2025 will bring. But before we jump along to the new year, I want to go back in time. I want to take a moment and go back to the beginning. And I don't mean January. Let's go back further, shall we? If you're familiar with my Saving Your Family Photos talks, you'll know that I don't simply start my program by sitting you down and explaining how to save your photos. I bring a little history into the mix and I go a little deeper. I talk about the beginning of photography and what photography means to us today. Hi, my name is Lindsey Smith with Exhibitsmith. I'm rethinking the way we save our stuff. I help people interpret, preserve, and better understand the objects that make up our world. If you have a lot of stuff, it might feel overwhelming, but believe it or not, I truly believe that artifact and heirloom preservation can be both easy and fun. In fact, I've developed a series of introductory level workshops on this topic and others just to prove my point. I also have an online course that just debuted that you might be interested in. Learn more about all this and more at exhibitsmith.com. So today, photography is everywhere. But as we go back in time, photography has meant very different things to us collectively throughout all the decades. Now, for the vast majority of human history, photography wasn't even a thing. It wasn't until 1839, when the daguerreotype hit the world, that photography became the medium we have today. So let's picture ourselves in the past. Pick a century, it doesn't matter. It might be the 1830s, 1730s, 1630s, 1530s. Pick a time. It's up to you. And when I say to picture yourself there, well, if you were going to make a picture of yourself back then, you better have a good artist on hand, right? Because painting, drawing, sculpting, those were the only ways you could actually take a picture of yourself. And if you weren't a good artist or you didn't have the means to commission a portrait or sculpture, most people didn't, then you were out of luck. Those were the only pictures around. And the photorealism painting techniques of today were certainly not around. So even then, if you did commission a portrait, you never quite knew what you were going to end up with, right? If you moved away, if you lost a loved one, if you were just away from someone or something or somewhere, and you wanted to remember them, you had to look into your mind's eye to try to remember the likeness. And of course, there was no alternative. Out of sight, out of mind. That's just how it was. Now, the people in the past didn't know what they were missing because they didn't know to miss it, right? If your house burned down, there was no way to ever see it again. Your grandfather's face, the field where you played, you were a baby when you were a baby. There was no reminiscing in the photo albums there, right? It was only in your mind's eye. And even now, as we look at photos from decades past, not too long ago even, before we took photos every 3.5 minutes, you may still be trying to picture a loved one at a certain point in time or on a certain day when no photos were taken. And it can be hard. You think you have it right, but you can never be sure. Well, that's how things always were until, bam, 1839, when the daguerreotype came along. And yes, these early photos were expensive, and yes, they were always very formal portraits. You would pay money and go to a studio, you would sit very still, and you would hope your image came out. Then you would get one image, no negatives, no duplicates, a single moment frozen in time. But it was an absolute work of art. Now, when I see one of these early images that has survived the centuries, I get excited because, wow, this delicate single piece of art has survived for us to be able to see so many years later, right? And daguerreotypes, of course, were just the start of our insatiable desire for photographic images. Because all of a sudden, Grandpa went to get his photo taken and he showed it to you on a little mirrored piece of metal in a fancy case behind glass. And as you held it, you look at him and you look at it. You look at him and back and forth. It was one and the same, a true likeness. Every birthmark, every hair out of place, his favorite bow tie. It was all there. It was precious and it was mind-blowing and it seemed impossible. So then, of course, everyone was fascinated by this technology, right? So new advancements kept coming out that made photography easier and cheaper and more durable and duplicatable and easier to travel with. And as the years passed, photography went from a mind-blowing life change experience that your ancestor experienced to something that was more expected and commonplace, although still a bit of a novelty. In the 1860s, paper-based photographs started to take off. We no longer had to rely on the very fragile, expensive images on metal or glass that were kept in delicate cases. Paper-based images had negatives that could be reproduced. Paper was inexpensive, it was more accessible, and all of a sudden people said, well, I want some of that in my life. So now, in addition to those pictures of our family and loved ones that we held so dear, we could have pictures of anything. We could see the world beyond our backyard in a true likeness. Wow. We could have pictures of celebrities in our home, no longer just reading about them in the newspaper. Now we can see them hanging out on our shelf. Think about how that changed society. The battlegrounds of the Civil War, for example, made war more real than anyone could have imagined. It truly changed people's perspectives. And as photography and photographs became more and more common in our daily lives, people thought of new ways to market and sell them. Why only take pictures of people in studios when you can take pictures of subjects that others might want to see, duplicate them, and sell them en masse? The rolling hills of faraway countries now became entertainment as stereoscope viewers, which were like viewmasters, transformed simple photographs into three-dimensional looking images. What fun! Then the world changed again in 1900 when the Kodak company put cameras in the hands of everyday people. Kodak's point and click technology let people document their everyday lives, letting us peer into homes and into their more silly and candid moments. Now, photo studios still existed, of course, just as they do today, but with so many amateur photographers out on the streets, they were able to document the good times, the bad times, and everything in between. And this changed our culture and society. Photography was no longer a once-in-a-lifetime event, a special thing to display in our home, an expensive event. It was no longer formal. It wasn't even something you had to seek out. Now we could take photographs anywhere at any time. And personally, I love these early 20th century photos because people were still wearing the very formal, oldie-timey dress that we have come to expect from the past. However, now the setting had changed and people are at a park, under a tree, they're being silly, they're laughing, they're having fun. They're clearly showing their personalities on film and in photographs for the first time. And it reminds us that people, our ancestors, have always just been people. And just because the photographs from the early years weren't documenting that part of their personalities, it was still there behind the scenes. When we see people swinging from trees and frolicking through fields being silly, we have to imagine and understand that people have always done those things for thousands of years, but we finally have photographs to document it. What a fantastic technology. Now, this evolution through imagery is fantastic for historians, of course, but to be living in that moment must have been just as wonderful as well. Oh, that was a cool building. I'm going to take a picture of it. Oh, I want a vacation here and I want to remember it. I don't want to forget this outing. You're documenting your life in real time. And of course, as the 20th century progressed, photographs became more prolific, as did motion pictures and television and photographs in print media. And by now, society simply expected it. Photography and film settled into a nice spot for a number of decades, where photos weren't rare, but they weren't constant. And when getting on the local news on TV was still a huge deal. But everything changed again around the turn of the century. And this, of course, was the start of the digital era, the era we're still in now. Now, today, our society has evolved again because now we take photos of everything constantly, and we can simply delete the ones we don't like. Was the lighting not good? There's an app for that, right? We started the digital photography era with digital cameras, but once smartphone cameras became the norm and cloud storage services made our lives easier, for better or worse, there was no stopping us. Nowadays, we don't have to be concerned about what we look like in a photo. We don't have to be concerned that we're wasting film. We get instant results. We delete what we don't like, and we're not wasting money, so why not? Of course, this is an extremely simplified timeline of events. I cover this in depth during my photo talks, but an in-depth look at our photography practices isn't necessarily the point of this episode. Instead, it's to help us all realize, or perhaps just to remember, how the role of photography has changed just in our lifetime. And looking back, the massive society-changing implications, there you go, it's had on our ancestors over the past almost 200 years. I mean, today we can't even get through a trip to the grocery store without being inundated with photographs and screens. And most of us don't think anything of it. Whether we like it or not, we just expect it. It's part of us. But not so long ago, those photographs would have been rare or even unheard of. And just a little before that, seeing a photo as you went about your daily life would have been a pretty big deal. So, as we look ahead to the new year, which will no doubt be filled to the brim with tabloid images and talking heads, I invite you to take a moment to go back in time, back to life before photography, and think of your ancestors whose world was completely changed the first time they ever saw a photograph. And then travel through time and think of how it became more and more normal, for better or worse, until we are at the point we're at today. Where will we evolve to next? Those are some pretty deep thoughts, right? To end of the year. Wow. Just wow. And on that note, I hope you've enjoyed today's episode. I invite you to subscribe to this podcast. And once again, you can see everything Exhibitsmith is up to at exhibitsmith.com. We have some free downloadable resources available to you. We have online courses that will be debuting. One is already up. We have a variety of program opportunities and other fun stuff that I invite you to check out. It's all at exhibitsmith.com. Thank you so much for listening. I'm already looking forward to the next episode.